Hello! We have 4 stories today of quick and fun odd tales of petty revenge. I wanted to continue mixing some lighthearted fun stories in among some of the more serious drama videos recently, because everyone deserves some levity in their day. And wouldn't you know it, Petty Revenge delivered with some bangers this month. Our first story, well, I won't do my usual punny intro because the writer deserves a special mention for theirs. So we'll do the unusual thing around here and read the title. I gave my ex-fiance back the ring 10 years ago. He's still Ferious. Haha, get it? Ferious? Amazing. Story 1. Recently, I, 31-year-old female, celebrated my birthday. As I moved across the country a few years ago, my besties back home and I had a video party together drinking some wine. It was a grand old time, and eventually, talk turned nostalgic and one of the gal pals brings up running into my ex-fiancé. We all reveled in the classic story, and one of them said to post here for giggles. So, to begin this saga, we need to turn the clock back a decade when I, 21 at the time, was dating and then engaged to ex, 32-year-old male at the time. Hindsight. The age gap was the first red flag, among many other flags he waved like an entire color guard in a high school band. Like him making much more than me, but I, in welding school full-time and working 2 jobs, paid for everything. After 6 months of being engaged, I found out he was cheating with an ex of his, so naturally, I called it quits. In a petty move, not related to the story, she ended up being my roommate for 3 years. Pretty cool chick who I'm still friends with. A few months pass, and when it's obvious I'm not coming back, ex starts a rabid campaign to get his Amazon-bought $190 ring back. Mind you, I'm still school full-time and working, so dropping the cheapo ring off was not at the top of my priorities. Eventually, I got tired of the harassment, so I gave the ring back, and then some. I sheared some half-inch thick steel plates, welded up a cube, dropped that ring in there, and then welded that puppy shut. If you shook the cube, you could hear a delightful ting, ting, ting of it rattling inside. I dropped it in the mail and went on my merry way and hadn't given it another thought until my birthday this month. According to Galpal, ex still has the cube and has not been able to get the Amazon ring out. He's still mad as heck and likes to rant about the ordeal to this day. I regret nothing and am filled with joy knowing I've been irritating him for 10 years now. In the comments, It's Smell said, I need the story about how you and ex's ex became roomies for 3 years. OP replied, it boiled down to she figured out he was lying about us being broken up. It was painfully obvious we were not. So she slid in the DMs and let me know what's up. We have coffee, hang out, and I move in with her after I dumped him. She even helped me pack and move. Demoob said, 10 years and he still hasn't borrowed an ankle grinder? Sambino replied, that would mean moving on. He likes to wallow in his simmering rage. Midwinter Sun said, girl, did you dodge a bullet with this one? Also, delightfully executed petty revenge. The ring he gave you probably has a resale value of no more than $50. Getting it out of that metal cube would certainly not be worth the effort and expense. He was incredibly petty asking for you to return it. Talk about getting back what you give tenfold. Salt Peanuts replied, if it's really a $200 ring, he'd be lucky to find anyone to take it at all. That's swap meet, $10 per ring or 3 for $50 territory. Love this story, but what I really want to know is where he keeps the cube in his house. Is it tucked away, or does it have the prime spot on a shelf so he can walk by it each day and curse OP, even though he totally made his own bed? OP obviously moved on. Insert my favorite welding pun here. No flux given. Get it? Flux. Our second story made me cackle with absolute glee when the scaredy cat kid of a family finally gets his turn at some just deserved comeuppance by saying boo during Doctor Who. Story 2. So, when my brother and I were young, he was about 7 and I was 10, he found out that I was very easily scared. The slightest sudden noise could make me jump out of my skin and get a scream from me. This would usually manifest in him hiding behind things and popping out with a loud boo, and he would get me every time. It got so bad that I was scared to even walk the halls of my house. After a couple years of this, my parents stepped in and told him to cut it out. It definitely slowed down, but he would do the occasional spook and get me. That is, until one fateful night in 2012. My family and I were big fans of Doctor Who, and it had entered its 6th series and introduced a new monster, the Silence. For those who don't know, the Silence look like somewhat generic gray aliens in a nice 3-piece suit. The catch was that every time a character would look away from the alien, they'd forget about it. So what the characters would do is put tally marks on their forearms and face whenever they see one. It was a very good idea for a monster and wonderfully executed in those first 2 episodes. During the 2nd episode, there's a character in an abandoned orphanage and she's looking out the window. Lightning strikes and her face and arms are full of tally marks. It's a very good scare. So good, in fact, that I noticed my brother is acting uneasy. So then I have an idea, a most horrible idea, a delightfully devilish idea, a petty idea. I asked my father to pause the episode because I needed to go to the bathroom. I lied. I didn't need to go to the bathroom. I grabbed a Sharpie and wrote a bunch of tally marks all over my face and arms. I was absolutely giddy. Then, with my game face on, I go back downstairs to the TV room. I turn on the lights. This makes my brother ask what was up, and he turns his head to look at me. He starts freaking the frack out, like he was back crawling towards our dad. My dad asks what's wrong, looks at my face, and starts laughing his rear off. I act like nothing happened and got closer to my brother, feigning concern. That freaked him out even more. After my dad and I had our laughs, he told me to wash up. My brother couldn't continue the episode, so he runs to his room. My dad calls my mom and tells her that I finally got one over my bro. Nowadays, there are no more pranks between me and my brother. He's graduating with his bachelor's degree and is one of my groomsmen in my wedding. He's a good man, and I'm very proud of him and I love him very much. In the comments, Leighton said, "Excellent. I had thought you were going to sneak in his room while he was sleeping and make tally marks on him, but your way was easier and worked well. I think I have to look up those episodes. I don't understand how this worked on the show. If the character immediately forgot seeing the aliens, how would they know what the tally marks meant? Wouldn't they just look at the marks all confused about their purpose instead of making new marks?" OP replied, "I can explain. They know that they're up against something they can't remember. So they already know that the tally marks means they have seen the aliens and they're potentially in the room. They can't remember what the monster looks like until they look at it again. It's a very creepy concept that I adore." Karma Repellent said, "Reminds me of when my ex and her sister were watching The Ring with me. At the part where you see what's on the tape, I put my arm down the side of the sofa, out of sight, holding my mobile phone and dialed the landline. When they then got brave enough to answer, I just scratched at the microphone with my thumbnail to make a creepy sound. Pants were shattered." Shadow Clown said, "He's going to be a groomsman? Have the fiance get him blackout drunk at the bachelor party and put tally marks all over him. For old time's sake. Just make sure they can't be seen when wearing a tux, or that they wash off. Wavy Glass with the best idea. Get him drunk and use a marker that only shows in black light. Slip into his honeymoon hotel room and replace the bathroom light with black lights." OP replied, I just might. Many people can orchestrate a well-timed prank, but a thoughtful and well-timed revenge prank? Well, that's just the bee's knees. I myself am such a scaredy cat. Definitely the jumpiest person I know. I've been pranked into tears. Left it off, of course, since it was all in good fun, but my goodness, I scare easily. Which is what makes this story all the sweeter in my books. Our third story is something anyone and everyone can relate with, as knowing one's kitchen is as secondhand as, well, knowing the back of that same hand. So when one meddling mother has designs to redesign where you keep that favorite wooden spoon, nothing can stop her tirade of kitchen destruction until it gets visited upon her, literally. Story 3. This happened when I had only just moved from home and got my own place. Super proud of myself as I'd saved like a demon and bought, with mortgage obviously, my first place. Lovely little 2-bed flat in a slightly rough area, but I loved it and it was all mine. My mom and stepdad came to visit for a few days a few months after I was settled in. nicely decorated, in my style, all my own furniture. One of the evenings they stayed, I had to work a late shift. They planned to go out for dinner and to the pub, and I left them to it. Came home at 11 p.m., and my mom had moved nearly all of the furniture around, and all my books and kitchen stuff were moved to different shelves or cupboards. She even moved my bed in my room, so when I opened the bedroom door, it hit the bed. I was so angry. So I angrily fixed what I could that night before going to bed. Spoke to her about it the next day, explained it's my home and I had it how I liked it, so stop, please. I put everything else back, which took hours. She grumbled the whole time that it looked better her way. Their last day, I nipped out to the shops to get us some nice bits for lunch, and in the hour I was gone, she'd done it again. Moved all my kitchen stuff around to where she liked it. Again, I told her off. My house, my rules. She still maintained it was better her way, and I should just let her crack on. Fine. I let her do what she wanted and put stuff back when they left. My revenge. I went to visit their house 6 months later and did it to her. She went out to work one day and I rearranged every bit of furniture I could by myself. Everything. Swapped the dining room and living room furniture over so you had to walk food through the living room and across the hallway to get to the dining room. Brilliant. Swapped their bedroom and guest room curtains over. The windows were different sizes, so their now bedroom curtains were 2 feet too short. Even the pointless little things like moving the spoons to a different side of the drawer, and moved every photo on the walls to a different wall, rearranged the fridge, took me 7 hours. My stepdad was home while I did it and laughed his head off the whole time. He refused to help but understood, so let me crack on. Neither me nor my stepdad said anything when she got home. We just sat watching TV, which was now in what was their dining room, and I asked her how work was. She didn't say a word. She walked around the house, taking it all in for 20 minutes, then came and sat down, looked at me and said, "Point taken." They'd put it back to how it was the next time I visited. We've not spoken of it since. In the comments, Lemonade Raygun said, "OP, you magnificent trickster. I almost wish stepdad had helped. Imagine how much extra mischief you'd have had the time for." OP replied, "I know. He's always a happy spectator for my shenanigans, but likes the quiet life too much to join in." Foiled Penny said, "This is the way. Teach me more." OP replied, "There's the toilet roll incident with my now husband, then boyfriend. He'd moved in with me after living with male roommates for 6 years. Had an infuriating habit of taking the whole roll of loo roll with him when he left the bathroom. Sod knows why. Being a woman, I need toilet roll every time I pee. He obviously didn't, so didn't see the issue. After the umpteenth time I had to yell at him to bring me it in the bathroom, I'd had enough. I went out and bought 4 packs of 12 toilet rolls and unpacked them all in the bathroom. Covered every surface of the quite small room with new rolls. Filled the bath with the leftovers. He laughed and put them in the cupboard and now remembers not to wander off with the whole roll. I actually quite like rearranging furniture. I used to do it all the time when I was in my teen years. Well, as much as I could rearrange my room with a desk and a bed in it. But I love the feeling of walking into my room and being surprised by the difference. Kinda like when you see yourself in a mirror after a haircut. Anywho, this does not extend to others. And mark my words, if anyone moved around my baking utensils, my tools, I would be livid. There would be hell to pay. The only acceptable reason for something being out of place in my kitchen is someone helping put the dishes away, which is always appreciated and met with a thank you. Our 4th story comes on the heels of my recent video confessing my love of all things coffee and coffee adjacent. When one CEO gets so uppity as to nickel and dime what can only be described as a life or death elixir of workplace productivity, one brave woman, nay, a heroine of caffeinated people everywhere, speaks out from behind her Java-filled tumbler. Story 4. In my last place of work, when I was looking to hire someone for my department, I would offer cold drinks and coffee at the interview in order to make them feel welcome. We could take the cold drinks out of the storage, but we had to order coffee from the kitchen and someone from the kitchen team would bring it out. One day, They called me back and said they couldn't bring me coffee since the CEO had decided coffee would only be provided for whole-day events. Grr, that cheapskate. Since then, I provided my own coffee for interviewees because to me, the welcoming impression was more important than the 30 cents a cup of coffee costs. But I plotted my little revenge. Since I had been asked to do a workshop for the other department heads and the CEO also wanted to participate. He, for some reason, loved workshops. Well, why not? So the day of the workshop came, I prepped the room, the participants trickled in and got settled, including the CEO. I greeted the group and laid out the plan for the next few hours. Asked if there were any questions. The CEO asked, "Can we maybe call the kitchen and ask where the coffee is? They seem to be running late." I made a point of taking a sip from my travel mug and then answered that there would be no coffee. This was a half-day workshop, and our new rules said that coffee would only be provided for whole-day events. I still cherish the surly look he gave me in response. He did not say anything and instead opened a bottle of water. Edit to address some of the recurring comments. I'm female, so please imagine the coffee is for closers guy with longer hair, a smaller nose, and a pair of breasts. No, I didn't get fired. Who the heck gets fired for such a thing, even if you live in a place without workers' rights? For the questions about how this affected my relationship with the CEO down the line, we didn't get along anyway after an incident where he tried to mess me over financially. This was not a problem though, since I had a boss that was between him and me in hierarchy. And if I ever needed anything, I just told her and she made it happen. In the comments, Areviola asked, "Well done. Did they change the coffee rule afterwards?" OP replied, "No," frowny face. Arsenic and Roses added, "Of course not. That would require the humility to realize and admit he was wrong." I'm a Mean One said, "Like a boss." Quoting, taking a sip from my travel mug and then answered, they added, "I hope you looked him dead in the eye when you said it." OP replied, "Yes, I actually did." And I was still holding my travel mug. Do not even get me started on cost-cutting related to coffee. I can't even handle it. And this was my stance well before I became a coffee aficionado. We all know that employers usually get the cheap stuff anyway, so to take it away entirely? Pfft, ridiculous. Speaking of, I once worked with a guy that brought his own coffee and French press to work because he couldn't handle the mud served at the office. On a separate but related note, I was recently gifted a Yeti tumbler, which I love. I can be a bit clumsy. Rarely. On occasion. Well, maybe several times a week. Anywho, Yeti, Contigo, you really can't go wrong with either when you're sipping your Java on the go. And that's it for today. Until next time, shine bright, Starlight. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.